there were events that were occurring at MBNA in Wilmington, Delaware, that were extremely peculiar. We had a murder-suicide of a high-level person who was in charge of creating, quote, new products for the MBNA organization, and 2 people who were involved with the security of MBNA.
That's a bank.
That's the bank that I submitted the information to Louis Free.
Right.
And I started, also simultaneously having very intimidating things happen. I had my computer essentially sabotaged via the internet. When I went in to kind of, do some personal evaluation of how it happened, I looked into the system files and found new files that were introduced that had .gov suffix on it.
Meaning government.
.gov, government, right, introduced into the file structure at the point in time when it was being attacked and destroyed.
Which means that somebody in the government was the one that came in and destroyed your computer?
They did it by the internet.
Are you saying that that's the signature of the person who destroyed it?
Well, I mean, it's very unusual to have a hacker
say .gov.
Yeah, create a whole virus system that would completely destroy a file structure, not just a file structure, but its capacity to even function as a hard disk, and leave files that were, a thumbprint that said .gov. I mean, what are you supposed to assume, So we had also indications that our phone was being monitored, strange sounds, clicks, that kind of thing. Just a little before that, we had an amusing situation develop where we were starting to have a party line on our line. And
party line meaning
no, there was people down the street on the same line, just like the old days where
lines across, in other words.
You're connected together, yeah, shared. And so when the telephone repairman came out and climbed up into the box and looked into it, and he said, well, there was this undocumented line that was attached to your phone connection. And it happened that some other technician decided to use that line for the person down the street. So he went in and he just cut it with a clipper. So obviously they had connected in a hard line that some other technician had, just stumbled into and used for a new line down the street. So
you think that this whoever was on your phone were the people that were tapping you?
Oh, I was pretty confident that that there was probably some agency that was keeping track.
You think those were the people that were doing it?
I didn't know exactly which branch of the government was doing it. I would only guess that there was several choices, but I had no strong feeling about any one agency or group. But I got the sense that this is beyond the pale of what you would expect in terms of monitoring my activities. And then the icing on the cake was when I was sitting in my front room watching TV, and I had a pointer dot from a aiming sight from a gun paint a red dot on the wall across through the window from behind my head.
A laser beam.
Laser beam.
A red laser beam.
And I moved my head away from the window, but you could see it dance around. It was, searching for a target. Later on, I looked through that angle and that it was coming from and where it hit the wall, and it was obviously coming from a vacant house, catty corner across the street. And needless to say, we were terrified. Intimidated in the context of things that are going on in Washington, D.C., what's happening at MBNA, the murder-suicide, and then all this happening in the frame of about a week or 10 days really was alarming.
Did the murder-suicide have something to do with you, do you think?
Yes, because
Can you explain that?
my feeling is, my theory about it is, number one, I should give a little bit more information that the state police closed the case within a matter of 1 day after the occurrence. There was no further investigation. Information that got into the paper was probably more than they would have liked to have printed in the paper, indicating that these people were involved with the security department of MBNA. And that most probably what happened was there was some effort on the part of these people in MBNA to use something of my findings to give them an edge in a futures market for terrorist attacks. Okay? And when that fell to pieces, when Poindexter was called on the carpet for even moving forward with a project like that, there was an outcry from the Senate and the Congress both to, dress him down quite severely. And at the same time, the plans crumbled at MBNA, and this murder-suicide ensued to possibly cover tracks.
Do you think that the people the murder-suicide, their names, do you have their names?
I don't have them with me tonight, but I can get them for you.
Well,
they're in the paper.
Yes. But my question is, were those people with whom you were in contact?
I didn't have direct contact with them, but they are in the same department of the people that I did contact.
So you feel that the murder-suicide related indirectly to your project?
There's a possibility.
Possibility.
And since there was that very short time span when all these events were happening simultaneously, I think that the attempt to, point this laser beam through the window as an aiming site was a sense of intimidation, destroying the computer, making it obvious that we were being listened to on the phone. I think that they were all attempts to say that
discourage you from going further.
Discourage me from
and
saying
intimidate you.
Intimidate me, yeah, exactly.
Well, join the crowd.
Okay. Well, I got my initiation. I got my baptism there.
Did you receive any? Those have all happened to me, by the way. And
okay.
And not only that, I've had 2 of my windows shot out.
Okay. There was an exchange of fire. There was only the aiming.
Well, there will be later on as you keep going. I can assure you that.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Of course, I don't know if there will or there won't. But anyway. Have you had any, I call breather telephone calls, where people are on the line and they don't say anything, they just breathe?
No, I didn't detect any breathing, but I've definitely had phone calls where there was silence at the other end.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, silence at the other end, and also...
Well, I call them breathers because nobody talks.
Right, or that when I'm in the middle of a conversation, there were clicks, or sometimes it sounded like Morse code.
Are you still receiving those type phone calls?
Intermittently, yeah. So.
Well, join the crowd.
Yes, I don't think
I've been receiving those for 26 years.
No, it would be a probability that this would be create a political furor if this were to come out in the context of the situation right now with domestic spying. And certainly, I was not involved with Al-Qaeda activities except for my information that I was sharing with the government, but yet these things did happen to me.
So anybody else that you talked to?
That did put a damper on me for a while. I think that not understanding what was going on and having encountered that, I was pretty shaken. I was concerned for other people in my life that were at risk as well, including my children. And I think that it took me, kind of like the 9/11 impact, it took me a little while to emotionally bounce back and recover from that. Then I continued to see other alarming things, like when the children were killed in Breslan and in Russia, I came to realize that the indications of the information that I had passed on to the government, the structure of it, obviously had not been passed along to the Russian government, because when the two airliners went down a few days before the Breslan attack, that specific site and at that particular time was at risk. And I had no idea whether there was sharing of information with them or not, but when I found out that the 600 or 800 children were killed, I was very shaken about that as well. I had seen confirmations of my findings in the public venue when we had the initial bombings in Saudi Arabia in May of 2003, I believe it was, and that was certainly well publicized that the American government was saying, the Arabs need to beef up security and so forth, and that was at a time when I was going home to visit my mother, who was dying, and had the very peculiar experience of, when I left the house, I didn't want to leave anything, of sensitive nature behind, so I took the computer with me. Well, by the time I was leaving Pennsylvania on the way back to Missouri...
You're driving?
Yes. I'm being followed by a canary yellow Corvette, very standing out in the open Corvette, and any time that I would speed up, he'd speed up. If, I slowed down, he'd stay behind. It just was very obvious. I'm a courier by profession, so I know when I'm being followed, and this was, you would have to be a fool not to recognize this. Well, he followed me for the whole span of Ohio and Indiana into Illinois.
How many hours is that? 6 or 8 hours?
That's more than that. It's close to 10 hours. It's it's probably between 8 and 10 hours. So,
How did you finally get rid of him?
Yeah, that was his decision. I had no hand in getting rid of him, but I did have one amusing event where, because of the nature of my mother's situation, we were trying to get through as quickly, and we were driving straight through. And my partner and I, along the way, had packed things in the back seat just for, to eat and such. And when she had turned around to get something to make a sandwich out of the cooler in the back, he was following us right on our left rear quarter panel. And when she turned around, he dropped back about 300 yards in about 10 seconds. Making it extremely obvious.
Your partner was going for a piece, huh? For a gun.
That's maybe what his concern was, yes. But it was only a bologna sandwich.
It was only a sandwich, okay. He didn't know that, though. Yes,
but in any case, we got a chuckle out of that.
So are these harassments and intimidations, they still going on?
It's less obvious. We still have obvious concerns with our phone. I'm very cautious about what I discuss on the phone. And we haven't had any interventions of the nature that I described. I had left out one of the major ones that happened in the August of 2003, and that we had a sneak and peek that I kind of interrupted.
A what?
A sneak and peek in the
house.
Sneak
and peek?
In our home, yes. We had somebody come in to look things over, and it had become apparent that he had been there before. What had happened with my job, it has a variable schedule. Turned out that I had worked late the night before, so I wasn't going in until about 11 o'clock that morning. And we have 2 dogs that tend to bark at anything that walks down the street. And are quite an annoyance in that way. But they also have a kind of whimper or vocalization when one of the family members comes home, and you get an indication that somebody is at the front door that we know. Well, I heard the dogs, whining like, vocalizing like they were happy to see someone, and I thought it was someone that I would welcome as well. And so I walked down the stairs, and as I got down to the front room, he was already in, and the dogs obviously knew him from before. He was posing as a pest control person who ostensibly was following an order to get rid of pests in our house that we didn't have, that we didn't order. And I started to question him about it, and asked him how he got in, and I knew the door was locked because I was, down earlier and had checked it, and obviously he had gotten in by some means of his own making, and he indicated that the door was unlocked, and he just walked in. We had, over the period of a few weeks before that, noticed a smell around the house, and we weren't quite sure what it was. We thought, well, maybe the neighbors next door were getting, some sort of pest treatment on their house, and that we were getting the scent of it at our house. But when the dogs had reacted the way they did, we were certain that he had been there before.
And made friends with the dogs.
Yes, he had befriended the dogs. And also, when I asked to see the work order for the house treatment, it was a generic blank work order, no heading, just indicating our address with a different person's name. And when I looked at the truck, it just said pest control on it. It had no name, no telephone number, it was very generic, and obvious that this person wasn't there to take care of any
official business.
Any bug business.
You don't know that.
The biological bug business, yes.
Of a particular type of bug.
Right. So that added to our concern at the time.
And this was in August of '03 then?
Right.
Anything since then?
Nothing of that magnitude, no.
Any indication that you've had other surreptitious entries, or surreptitious entries per se?
Not that we found evidence of. Not to say that they would be successful in getting in and out and are not knowing it.
What was the smell that you...
It was, in fact, a pesticide smell.
So he went in there
and actually sprayed.
On his own?
Yes.
Without knocking on your door or without permission then?
Right, and had been doing it for a few weeks. So.
You think it was poison gas?
I wouldn't have thought about it in that regard at that time, but anything is possible. So.
You had no right to be in there.
No.
Did you get the license number?
I could not get the license number because he pulled away too fast. So.
Did you make an incident report with the police?
No, because I knew it would go nowhere.
I know, but in the future you should.
Okay.
Advice from somebody who's made dozens of incident reports.
Right, okay. All right.
Yeah, no, it's good. Build a case.
Okay.
And another suggestion I have is make notes.
Mm-hmm.
Dates, times, places, when anything like that happens to you.
Right.
Carry a camera with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a surveillance on you, take their picture.
Mm-hmm.
And carry a tape recorder with you at all times. So you can go right into the tape recorder and say on such and such a date, such and such a time, this is what happened.
Right.
And that person happened to be driving right alongside of me right now in a yellow sports car.
Yes. Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Those are just a few little tips that I'll pass on.
I have a lot to learn.
Well, I'm sure you'll do very well. You're a very intelligent man. So what's happened, anything since then?
Well, obviously something has happened since then. There was an awakening of sorts. I had...
By the way, and also put a Medeco lock on your door. M-E-D-E-C-O lock.
Okay. All right. I'll remember that. All right. In any case, It wasn't until 2005 that anything really remarkable happened. At that point in time, I was on an assignment in which I was driving around in an area that was an area that I hadn't driven in for a while, and I happened to just scan through the radio and had picked up a station that was talking about the truth movement and what happened on 9/11, and it happened to be Alex Jones's show, and so that was my first awakening that, you know, there's pieces of the puzzle that I hadn't even considered that I needed to reevaluate.
And by the way, Alex, thank you very much for being on that radio show, giving him a wake-up call.
Yes, thank you.
And from there, you started putting the pieces together a little more, a little more, a little more each day.
As you have seen in the prior presentations, yes, I have put together a more solid case of their participation in 9/11, yes. And
So that's why you're here.
That's why I'm here.
Well, now, exactly why are you here? How did you come into contact with, say, me and my colleagues out here who are filming this interview?
It was very hard for me to do any outreach because I didn't have any idea where to go. I wanted to make contact with people, but the information that I had was so sensitive that I didn't dare just mail it away or send it by email, or I looked for people whom I could hand deliver and discuss it directly with. And it wasn't until this past fall when, after having this knowledge and built a strong case, that I encountered a copy of the American Free Press by a kind of happenstance situation where, again, I was filling in an assignment where I was at Dover Air Force Base. They have.
Let me interrupt you. And American Free Press is a Washington, D.C. publication. And I think it's on the website, it's AmericanFreePress.net, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it's worth looking into, and it's worth subscribing to.
Yes, I agree. Apparently someone at the Air Force Base was a subscriber, and they had taken their previously read issues and tore off the mailing label and threw about 8 or 10 copies of it in a wire rack next to the exit to the door. And I was
You were on the.
I was on my
courier?
work. I was working as assignment, yeah, as a courier. And as I walked out the door, it caught my attention, and the headlines were obviously not something you would expect at a United States Air Force Base. And I picked up 2 or 3 copies of it and took it along with me and got quite an education. And also the first opportunity to recognize someone who was of like mind that I could contact within, you know, at least driving distance. And that's how I contacted John Nugent at American Free Press. And through John, I met Malcolm and Clarence Malcolm. And Clarence introduced me to you. So here I am on the other side of the world, was able to scrape together the money to get out here and present this to you so that people have a chance to get to know what this is all about.
Excellent.
At the same time, I had tried to make an outreach to National Public Radio. I had been following their news coverage off and on throughout time, and I noticed that they were allowing some of their guests on their programs to bring up specific details of the truth movement, and they would give it a little bit of attention, and then they would move on to something else very quickly. But it was evident that they were trying to get, you know, a little inkling of it out. So I had contacted one of the correspondents, Marty Moskowayne. And once again, she is based in NPR in Philadelphia, and WHYY. And so I drove up there and hand-delivered material to her, had a few phone conversations with her after she evaluated it, and she indicated that the situation at NPR at the time was when they were being constrained by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting oversight of NPR for being too liberal, and that this was not something that she could immediately use that day, or she didn't feel like that she could make any headway with it. And so she returned the material and sent me a note that, let's see, she says, "Thanks for sending me the information. I'm sorry I couldn't be of any more helpful, signed Marty Moscoing." She wouldn't even send me a letter-headed response. She was kind enough to give me a handwritten response, though. So obviously the press is being constrained in their ability to even allow this material to be covered.
Controlled.
It's extremely controlled.
Where do we go from here?
We try to, in all possible ways, get the message out, because it is quite certain that they plan to do something again. And if it's soon, we may not have a capacity to react, but if this information is out there, I think people will be watching so closely that they are hogtied so that they can't do it. And possibly there might actually be the impeachment of some very high officials for high crimes. No misdemeanors on this. It's all high crimes.
Treason.
Treason. Murder.
Absolutely.
Mass murder.
And illegal and invasion and violation of our civil rights.
Yes.
And the Constitution.
And that's their whole objective. Yes.
And to take over the world.
Yes.
The United States first and then the world.
And they're well on their way.
Absolutely. And it's called the Illuminati.
And the New World Order.
The New World Order, globalism,
Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones.
And all the organizations that they control. And
The highest levels of the Masonic Lodge.
yes.
The very high. You have to understand, and I always say this in my lectures, and I've given a number of lectures, that the people only at the higher level of the Masonic Lodge are the ones who are involved in this.
I agree.
And I'm not saying that everybody at the highest level or in some of the various lodges are all involved in this.
Right.
But the people in the lower levels of the Masonic Lodge are, everyone I've ever met, I had a lot of confidence in them. They're good people.
Yes, and they're for good causes.
For good causes.
And they're serving the community.
So I think we need to qualify that.
Yes, it's
And another qualification I think we need to make is that there are a lot of good people in the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and these various alphabet agencies in the government. There's a lot of good people in Congress, not an awful lot, but there's some. And I think we have to understand that not everybody in the government falls in this category.
That's right. That's right.
This is, I've been called a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. There is a conspiracy. And I think that you, Bob, have certainly done an outstanding job of documenting this in the presentations that we've had the last several days.
Yes. Well, I appreciate your having me and taking the time to review it, and it's certainly a monumental step forward to have accomplished this. Thank you.
And thank you very much, and God bless you.
God bless you.